AITA for sending my daughter to school in her pajamas? My 7-year-old daughter, Elsie, has recently started to make mornings more difficult by throwing a fit when we ask her to get dressed for school. We've tried setting her clothes out the night before, but she still makes an issue out of it. And she doesn't want to sleep in her clothes, so that's not an option either. My wife leaves for work before me, so I'm normally the one who has to deal with the tantrums in the morning. I woke Elsie up, and as always, she refused to get dressed. I wasn't really in the mood to deal with her BS, and I didn't have the energy to fight with her about it. So I told her that it was okay and I'll just take her to school in her pajamas. She looked pretty shocked because I don't think it was the outcome she was expecting. But the rest of the morning went a lot smoother than normal. We got in the car and she was more quiet than usual, so I could tell she wasn't really sure what to think of it. But after a while of driving, I guess the realization set in, and she told me she wanted to go home and change. I told her she had already made her decision and I wasn't driving her back home now. She started freaking out, saying she wanted me to drive back home and she didn't want to go to school in her pajamas. But I wasn't turning the car around. So we arrived at school and she eventually went in. After my wife came home from collecting her from school, she looked pissed. She didn't say anything in front of Elsie, but later in the evening, as expected, she went off on me. She started saying that I had embarrassed her and made us look like bad parents who can't be bothered to dress our daughter. I told her that I'm sure Elsie isn't the first child to go to school in pajamas, and it's not the end of the world. And she wears normal clothes every other day, so one day in pajamas isn't going to make everyone think we're bad parents. She told me she thought it was a cruel thing to do to Elsie, but in my opinion it was harmless and taught her a lesson. I had a daughter that had issues with this. I made getting dressed a contest between us every morning. I tried to make it really fun. I'm gonna beat you. I am already halfway done, etc. I let her win most mornings, but every once in a while we tie, or maybe I'd slightly beat her. It changed the whole dynamic of the morning. NTA. Your daughter was testing boundaries and she learned the limit. If you had turned around, she might have done the same the next day and started a new pattern. By sticking to your decision, in a harmless environment when your daughter was in no danger, she learned a lesson about the consequences of her actions. Plenty of kids show up in pajamas, costumes, funky, cool, not funky, smelly clothes all the time. I'm not a fan of embarrassment as a form of punishment, but I do believe in appropriate teachings. That there are consequences to actions. You did not harm your daughter. She chose not to get dressed for her day, and so her day progressed in the clothing she was in. Consequences to her actions. NTA. My reasoning is as follows. You made it very clear to her that this was going to happen before you left home, and she accepted this. True, it wasn't until you reached school that reality set in for her, but she isn't a toddler who can't think through consequences very well. I do note that the division here is between the people who think that this is a cruel humiliation, and those who think it is a fair consequence for behavior. I imagine it will be very split because it's clearly quite emotive. I don't think you're the asshole, but I would have brought a backup set of clothes for her in case she decided to change in the car before school. NTA. Because unless she has sensory issues or has some reason she hates wearing regular clothes normally, I suspect these tantrums are a power struggle. She thought that if she refused to get dressed, you'd allow her to stay home from school. And you called her bluff by making it clear that with or without appropriate clothing, she was going to school. Only thing I can't help but wonder is if there's some reason she doesn't want to go to school that you're overlooking. I think you need to have a conversation with her. NTA parenting at its finest. But from all the YTAs, I see why so many kids don't learn that actions have consequences. This was an age-appropriate consequence that linked directly to the action. This is literally how kids learn from their mistakes. No one got hurt, and everyone will forget about this next week when someone spills their juice. No big deal. Info: does she refuse to dress on non-school days? Have you checked that she's not dragging her feet on purpose? Being bullied, bored. Teacher has to tell her no. Refusing to dress seems more like she doesn't want to go to school than anything else. Though neurodivergence is always a possibility. Kid would get distracted with pants half on. Oops. Info: is she picking her own clothes? NTA: you taught your daughter a valuable lesson. Actions have consequences. She chose not to get dressed and have a tantrum. She got to be embarrassed at school. Bet the next morning's get ready time is a bit less dramatic. NTA: I bet she'll get dressed from now on. My daughter did this with her kids on the advice of a teacher. They get dressed every morning now. NTA: your kid learned a lesson and no one was harmed. She's not going to be thought of as the neglected child, and her classmates probably forgot by the time they got home. My wife would disagree with this, I'm sure. Lol. Make sure you look more closely into why she's not wanting to go. Get ready. Could just be testing boundaries. Could be some trouble at school. You are not the first parent to do this. It was recommended by my daughter's school to send her in her pajamas if she refuses to dress. My sister, also teacher for 20+ years, says the same things. As long as you get them to school and no underlying issues causing it. The schools understand and see a lot worse. You did the right thing. I work at an elementary school. This is a great solution. We get a lot of late arrivals due to not wanting to get ready. This is one of the remedies we give. NTA: 7 years old is old enough to understand that behavior has consequences. I find it unusual that a child of this age is still refusing to wear appropriate clothing for school. Is there any chance that she may be neurodivergent? Or is she trying to push boundaries, do you think? I may be a bit too relaxed in this. Where I come from, it's quite common to drop your kids off at school whilst you, the adult, are wearing pajamas, and people often go to the local shops in them too. I taught 2nd grade, and I can assure you, you are NTA. Kids get these ideas in their head, and you found the way to get her to understand that you meant what you said and would follow through and not bend. One of the problems with kids today is parents give in on everything. Her being in school in her PJs isn't harmful to her. And it hopefully taught her to make better choices. If you think she's going to need another round of this to get it straight, I suggest you let her teacher know what is going on. I had a student who since kindergarten decided he didn't want to go to school. And a staff member would have to try to persuade him to let go of the railing and come into the building. Sometime I wouldn't get him in class until after lunch. You can imagine all the learning he's missed out on. NTA: if she won't stop throwing tantrums, angle get dressed for school. Then dropping her off in her pajamas and let her embarrass herself is really the only thing that will sink into her 7-year-old brain. Good job, Dad. Keep it up. She isn't the first kid to go to school in her pajamas, and she won't be the last either. It's not the end of the world, and it's not even remotely cruel. Your wife is mistaken. You didn't make you look like bad parents. Quite the opposite. Bad parents would be giving into the tantrum and letting the kid be late for school and you late for work. NTA: this is what I would consider a natural consequence. Good for you on following through. NTA: it's called consequence. Get dressed or go as you are. I've done it myself with my kids. although I snuck their clothes in a bag and gave it to the school office. But it taught them a valuable lesson. I'm all for giving choices. But some things are non-negotiable. Washing, teeth hygiene, dressing appropriately for school, etc. She pushed. Learned a lesson. Bet she won't dick about in the morning again, lol.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. AmITheAsshole is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.